hope it doesn't.
It seems like the way they act is every year they won the Super Bowl.
It's just one of the priorities. It's like everybody will trust the scientists on exactly what our message is. Everybody will trust the money eclipse where to go, like for the eclipse and the exact like area to watch the eclipse happen, NASA and all that. Everybody will listen to them about the environment. Think of it that way.
Or even part of it. They'll listen to a whole other bunch of kids. When you tell them, that temperature rise, storms that normally don't happen. They're not trying to do it. It's a hoax.
It's a hoax. All right. I'll be listening at work.
Okay.
Go.
See you later.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hey, you heard the music. It's a little after 9 o'clock, so you know what time it is. It's time for the workplace here on KABF 88.3 FM. Voice of the People Community Radio. I'm your host with the workplace, Toney Orr, and as always, my co-host, the Reverend Dr. Denise Donnell, is in studio. I hope everybody's having a great Thursday so far. I feel like there's an echo. Let's see.
I don't hear it.
Yeah, it feels like I got an echo, but it just might be me. So, got a great show for you today. Got a couple of things to talk about. First of all, I just want to thank all of you who are still sending donations and pledges. Oh my God, it has been so wonderful. Every day, we're getting in more letters, we're getting in more notices from PayPal that you have been going online. And also, just want to thank all of you who have become sustaining members of KABF. Your monthly contribution is surely and greatly appreciated. But you don't have to wait to play a drive to give to KABF 88.3 FM. You can give at any time you want to. You can donate at any time you want to. You can go to our website, www.kabf.org, and you can give. You can also send us a check of money over 2101 South Main Street here in Little Rock. You can come by the station at that same address, 2101 South Main Street, and give your donation or pledge, your donation in person. And you can also call 501-372-6119 and give your donation over the phone. But we really do appreciate you tuning in this morning. We really appreciate you tuning in to all the shows here at KABF 88.3. So I want to give my co-host Denise the opportunity to greet you this morning.
Grand Rising humans, it's good to be with you today.
Okay. Do you have any announcements?
Just about Domino's in the park. We're supposed to be in the park, the weather permitting. So if the weather is bad, we will be at the museum on the 3rd floor in the community lounge. If something is happening in the community lounge, sometimes they have other people that have reserved the space, then we'll just be right outside the museum, sitting outside the park grill, just right there. You can't miss us.
Okay, I have one announcement. This is from Dana Dossett, Director of Community Programs for for the Department of Community Programs here in the city of Little Rock. Building tomorrow's workforce today. Become a summer youth host site. Summer youth host site. Help us to reach our goal of adding 15 new summer youth employee work sites for summer 2024. Each summer, the city of Little Rock hires and pays for 600 summer youth employees from the ages of 16 to 21. If you would like to invest in your workforce and learn more about hosting a summer youth intern, please contact Dana Dossett at 501-399-3420. That's 501-399-3420. Or you can go to ddossett at littlerock.gov. That's DOSSETT at littlerock.gov. So there's a couple of things we want to talk about this morning. The first one is about a new rule, three new rules that the Biden administration has come up with for nursing homes. We understand that it's predicted that not only as our society gets older, that increasingly nursing homes are starting to fill up. A lot of Americans are now switching to nursing homes or assisted living for their loved ones as they get older. One of the issues with nursing homes is there has not been a federal rules. There's some federal rules or minimum standards across the board. Each state has their different licensing. Each state has their different rules and mandates. But now the Biden administration is put forth an effort to have federal minimum standards, which is great for the residents of nursing homes and the workers of nursing homes, especially those nursing homes that are Medicaid, Medicare funded, which is in my case, in our case for United Labor Unions, it's a good thing because we have about 20 to 30 facilities that are nursing home based that we represent workers that we have contracts with. And one of the things that we have found out over the years is that not only pay is an issue, but staffing. Staffing has been a real problem. But now with these minimum standards, that you have to have this many CNAs, you have to have this many nurses, you have to have this many line staff, that's kitchen workers, cooks, custodial, laundry workers. You have to have this. It's going to push nursing homes, and the Biden administration is also providing funding to increase the wages. So it's going to put nursing homes at a place where if you want to stay open, you're going to have to follow these standards, because once they come in and they do their monthly and their yearly inspections, if you are below these standards, then you are going to, as a nursing facility, you're going to run the risk of losing your accreditation. You're going to run the risk of losing that funding. So it's going to put these administration, these companies in a position where they're going to have to follow these standards, where it used to be it was really no standards to follow. Now you're going to have to follow these standards. And like I said, it really, really bodes well for those workers. At the end of the day, you take a state like Louisiana, which has been notoriously cheap in how they want to pay their nursing home staff. Louisiana has no state minimum wage. They still use the federal minimum wage, which is $7.25 an hour. So to them, if they pay somebody $9 an hour, they say, we're paying you above the federal minimum wage and you should be happy. Well, of course, nobody's happy with $9 an hour, because who can live, who can survive? And so when you look at a lot of these workers, these staff at nursing homes, they have multiple jobs at multiple nursing homes that on average, they work at least 2 jobs at 2 different nursing facilities. Because of these new rules being put in place, it's going to force nursing homes to increase their pay in order to be staff wise. And that's what's so important about this. With these minimum standards, it's a guideline that they have to follow, which makes it better, not only, like I said, not only for the staff that's working there, but for the residents who live there. And I don't know, I think most of us, a lot of us, or have a friend or have a family member or know someone in the community where their loved one is at a nursing home. And when you go to these nursing homes, a lot of times there's a lot of complaints, there's a lot of issues going on. And part of those complaints and issues is that it's not enough staffing. And so it's going to be a game changer for the nursing home industry. And of course, the nursing home industry is pushing back. They're trying to push back against this, but because it's an executive order, it's nothing they can really do. They can try to fight it, or what they can do is try to get another president in office that will rescind that. But to me, why would you want to? Why would you want to do that when you're talking about human life, and not only human life that's being taken care of, but the life of humans who are taking care of these residents. So I want to get your take on that this morning. Phone lines are open 501-433-0088, 501-433-0088. The other hot topic that I want to talk about is what happened in DC yesterday. So for those of you who may remember, and if not, I'll remind you real quick. Over the past several months, the House Committee on Education has been really pushing, not only, at first they started with the presidents of Harvard University, the University of Pennsylvania, and MIT. They had their, in the subcommittee hearings, talked about and what they were doing about a Gestapo administration, but nobody is saying anything about that. But you're concentrating on the schools and this idea that this anti-Semitism is running rampant. And they said, one Republican congressman said that it's the most dominant factor in America today. And one of the things that one of the superintendents said that, well, we're doing a lot to combat this. We're having more classes against hate Jewish hate. We're having classes about the Jewish experience in America, which made me giggle. It made me laugh because it was so funny that you want to give classes about the Jewish experience in America. You want to give classes about Jewish hate in America, but you don't want to have classes about hate against Black people in America. You want to take away classes that talk about the Black experience in America. And you don't want to deal with the idea that basically, to me, is that anything that's dealing with Black people in America in schools, you don't even have discussion about it. And so to see all this play out amidst this anti-Semitism, which goes back to what has happened with going on in the Middle East with Israel and Hamas in Gaza, that if you speak out against the atrocities, then you become anti-Semitic, instead of people focusing on that the issue isn't about being anti-Semitic, it's about being anti-human. So those are the two topics we're going to get into, that we're going to discuss today. So if you want to call in and join the conversation, 501-433-0088. So what do you have any comments on it, Denise?
I think that, you got a call.
You on there?
Well, thank you so very much. Morning, Sister Denise, Brother Toney.
Morning,
Good
Ezekiel.
morning, Matt.
Two comments pertaining to your subject. Our start with God and then go back way back to this moment. As far as folks starving God, if you can remember, the United States waged war against the Native Americans, starved them out by killing off the buffalo. So that's nothing new. We know how imperial regimes or the imperial desires work. Okay, they starve Indians by killing the buffaloes, so that's not new warfare method. Now, I'll leave that alone and go back to what you were talking about. I don't know if you can remember Beverly Enterprise.
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, we're Google Beverly Enterprise, the good bad. But the Attorney General lost his, he was a big bar and lost his license to trying to go against the established way of running this nursing home, etc. And it's kind of sad that folks have to work so hard that they're not able to take care of their parents and loved ones, and they have to put them in these nursing homes out of hand. And it's not just the folks who pay for care, but for the care of loved ones who they become a certain age and you're not able to be there with them. Used to be many years ago, that's why I'm not working on service. And I'm sure folks know what I'm talking about, because that was the time when most folks had home with their loved ones. They couldn't afford nursing homes and things like that. So now it's evolved, and we have the situation with the nursing home, as you mentioned, staff are underpaid. The administrators do pretty good, but a lot of times folks who work there aren't doing this way. So I just want to make that back known. But back when the Beverly Enterprise was going against the government or different folks in the Baptist group, the folks in charge of that said, well, if you don't like the way we run our nursing homes, we just get all these old folks out. And being the regulators went away, they never heard anything else from them again, because who wants to see a bunch of old folks turning out and no one to care for them? So that's one way they call it, and the government trying to tell us how to run nursing homes and things like that. I'm going to put out there and hope someone listens more about that situation. It's not just Louisiana, it's Arkansas and Alabama and California and New York and Connecticut and all these other places. Student nursing home industry was a pretty big just like the food industry. It just mostly deals with the ill and those third-party things, particularly having stuff that for the nursing homes and things. So it's a big business, and there's more to it than just the folks trying to say that it's it has to do a lot of things. They have nurses on staff and situation, things that nature, make some country that doesn't think. Oh, and by the way, on a show the other day, a gentleman called in, I think he was the congressman, and he said the number one issue that folks are talking to him about is what's going on the board. I think the man is Frank Stevens. Folks are talking about him, what's going on at the southern border. And I just want to say, well, you must not be connected to the community that I'm community with, because that's not the number one issue in the community that I live in and that I'm about here.
Well, I think, French Hill is a Republican, and that's their talking point. That's their number one talking point, even with our governor here, who keeps sending troops to the southern border under the guise that it's such a big crisis. But you are right. Most Republicans are not in tune with the real issues of the community. They're just going by this standard agenda that is being perpetrated across the country.
But now, if he's not in tune to the public agenda, he was commenting about the commemoration, if you will, the day debates and right now, all that. But in other words, if we're not contacting him and let him know what our problems are, he might be right in what we say, because I know one time we got you up here saying anything about us except rock or that he was Tom Patty never had anything good to say about us, if you will. At least when you more accommodate the platform as KABF. So, but he might be right. We might not be in contact. My contact him once, but I thought one of these days, that was about his phone. I think everybody else just gets to talk together more what they're thinking about as far as what that practice is in our community. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to contact him, and I think a lot of people fail to realize that, regardless whether he is one party or another, he's still, our elected officials still work for us, and we should reach out to them. We should tell them, but more importantly, they should come into the community and be more invested in trying to find out what's going on in the community.
And if they don't, we need to be proactive and let them know exactly what it is that's about.
I agree.
Okay, well, that's my point today. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. Hope you point you guys that, dominoes in the park. And take care.
Okay, thanks, man.
You're welcome.
You were getting ready to say something, Denise.
Ezekiel asked me to look up Beverly Enterprises, and that's what I was doing. So I want to say something about this nursing home, this chain of nursing homes that was in Missouri and in Texas, and also in Arkansas and Fort Smith. And what I really feel like we have to continue to focus on is making sure that we connect the dots. So part of the demise of Beverly had to do with the legislation that forced hospitals to release patients sooner than they probably should have been. So the patients are still in need of care. Where are they going to go, especially in light of what Ezekiel says about families not being able to have the time nor the resources, the financial resources to adequately care for their loved ones. And so you're forcing them into this nursing home situation. So because you're forcing them there, then the nursing home kind of has an upper hand, because like, well, what you gonna do? They can't go anywhere else, so we can do whatever we want to do. And so we treat them, there's a lot of negligence that was happening in these nursing homes, to the point that Texas was like, we're not even gonna support you with the Medicare or Medicaid payments because you are so negligent in your dealings. And so when we have this systematic approach to oppression on all levels, I center it in Blackness, but right now we're talking about healthcare. When you have this systematic approach to oppression in the field of healthcare, then that becomes the issue, which brings us always back to the issue of voting. Who you vote for, those are the people who determine the legislation that's going to be passed. And so when you have the country that we are living in that's more concerned about capitalism, more concerned about making profits, because that's what Beverly is doing. They were acquiring all of these properties, and they were going outside the healthcare field to get all of this. They're just trying to make money. They're trying to make money off of your body. And that's what we continue to talk about, especially as it relates to Blackness. And now we can just broaden the conversation to talk about it as it relates to healthcare. So I just wanted to respond to that since he asked me to.
Yeah, and you know, when you really think about it, not only are they making money off the patients that are coming in, but also off the bodies of the staff that are working there. One thing that's really started to facilitate this boom in the nursing and healthcare field was as the generation that society starts to get older, and once Medicaid, Medicare funding came into a lot of these facilities, because some of these facilities are private. They're private facilities where the family pays. The family pays. The Medicaid, Medicare is not really a option in there. And then you have these facilities that are primarily funded by Medicaid, Medicare. It's in those facilities that you have a lot of negligence. You have a lot of problems. And like I said at the beginning of the show, because each state would have its own regulations that, almost to that, the licensing part, the inspections part. Here at Arkansas, the organization, the state organization that looks over nursing homes is the Office of Long-Term Care. Not only do they look over nursing homes, they regulate nursing homes, they regulate human development centers here, they regulate some of the DYA centers here, and so they have to answer. And so it's problematic because at one center, at one facility, you may have this rule in place or something may happen, but if the same thing happened in another facility, it could change. That's what got former Representative Henry Wilkins III. That's what got him caught up. That's what got Judge Maggio out of Conway. That's what got him caught up, because it was this nursing home scheme where they were looking, they would turn their backs on some things or creating policies for certain nursing facilities that were owned by Michael Morton. And because of that, they were getting these kickbacks. They were getting these payoffs. And when you connect the dots, you always connect the dots to the money. You follow the money. And when you start looking at the money, that's when you can start to see the discrepancies. That's where you can see what's really going on. Because in a lot of these nursing facilities, because the nursing home industry, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I do not know the exact number, that amount of money that it takes in, but just on a wild guess, I know it has to be northward 20 to 30 billion dollars. It has to be even far. It has to, I know it's above that. And I'm just going to use $30 billion as a minimum. But I believe it's more than that. So when you talk about all this type of money, and especially if Medicaid, Medicare is involved in it, because now the government and the states are paying that money. It's right. It's a fraud waiting to happen. And the people at the top, they're going to get their cut. But when you go down to the bottom, when you start looking at the patients, you start looking at the staff, that's who suffer. That's who are not going to reap the benefits of these billions of dollars. And so that's one of the reasons why it's a good thing that these rules, these minimum standards are being put in place, because it can regulate. I think the idea is that it can regulate how these facilities operate, and that they have to operate under a certain standard. That if that's not going to happen, then there's going to be certain type of penalties. How it works out, will it work out? Don't know. But I'm hoping, because it's something that's put in place, it may work out.
I think so. I'm reading Joy DeGruy's post-traumatic slave syndrome, and what she's asking us to do is to apply the lens of slavery to the behaviors that we see people demonstrating, so that we can get a better understanding of why people do what they do, and what's the source and what's the root, so that we can figure out how to heal, how to hold people accountable, how to move forward. And so when I think about the need for federal regulation, I feel like if you look through the lens of enslavement, chattel slavery to be specific, it's about always trying to make sure that the states have their own rights. So I want to, the southern states wanted to have their own rights so that they could continue to enslave humans. So don't tell us what to do, because we want to be able to do whatever we want to do, which is dehumanize, enslave, rapes, murder, slaughter, lynch. That's what we want to be able to do. So we don't want the government to tell me what to do. And we have this Republican platform now, the modern Republicans, that are always talking about government overreach, like don't tell us what to do. And so the federal government has to step in, because we continue to live it through that lens of let us do whatever we want to do, so that we can dehumanize, so that we can oppress, so that we can capitalize off of the bodies, off of the labor of other folks. And so I feel like the government sometimes doesn't have a choice, because if we leave it up to you, you're not going to do right. You simply aren't going to do right. And so I hope that it works out so that we can have better care, better work conditions, better payment, like all of that. I hope that it works out. But it's just sad that the government has to step in, because we cannot trust the states to do what is necessary for the good of the people.
And, looking at it through that lens, and I'm glad you brought that up, looking at it through that lens, Matt said something that's so important when it comes to the Black community. In times past, in the past, very seldom did you see Black people put their loved ones in a nursing home. I'm not going to say it was rare, but it wasn't as prominent as it is now. What you would see, is that I would go to relatives' house, especially when I would come here to the South from Chicago, and you'd walk in the house, and that would be, uncle or aunt so-and-so, have their room, they got a hospital bed in there, they just didn't put them in nursing home. They kept them at home. They say, hey, we're going to keep them at home. Even if they were in their own house, somebody would, from the family would move in. I remember my grandmother and grandfather, who were both bedridden for some time, and they needed total care. And whether it was my aunts, whether my cousins or whoever, they stayed in that house with my grandmother and grandfather to take care of their needs. It was never a thought that they were going to be put in a nursing home. But what happened is that because of because the economy, well, I don't want to say the economy, but because it was this idea that, hey, you got to work, you got to do all this. Then once Medicare came into play, they said, well, you can put your loved one here, we'll pay for it and everything, and it'll free you up. And I think that's one of the things that happened that pushed more Black people to put their loved ones into nursing homes. When you look at the statistics, a higher percentage of Black people are now putting their loved ones in nursing homes. And when you look at the percentages, the majority of workers in these nursing homes are Black. In Louisiana, where we have the majority of our nursing facilities, our nursing homes, 75% of the workers are Black. So it goes back to this thing, and who has been taking care of people in this country the most? It's been Black people. Whether it was taking care of the children of the slave master, was taking care of the house, but that was part of this idea that slavery had put on Black people, that you're going to take care of us. And so when you start looking at the healthcare, not just with nursing homes, but you look at the healthcare industry uh, uh, as a whole, the majority of the people who take care, whether it's a patient care tech, was it environmental tech, transportation tech, most of those are Black people. And so, and it still goes back. At the top is is making money, but the bottom isn't. And this is the idea that we don't value your body. We don't value your work. We don't value you as a human. So we're going to give you the least amount that we can, and while we make the most that we can.
And so Phyllis Brown is here with this comment that says nursing home care was cost prohibitive. And so perhaps that's why something is going on with our sound. That's why people were keeping folks at home, because they could not afford to have them in the nursing home. And so once it became feasible, more economically feasible for people to be able to put their loved ones in a nursing home, then that's when they decided to make that choice. That's what I'm hearing from this comment. I want to add to that I think that, and for Black people in particular, we get to the point in our life where, like, we've lived so much of our lives. The history of our lives is that we were not welcome in this country for any reason. Like, we were not welcome to participate on any level. We were not welcome to eat in places. We were not welcome to vote. We were not welcome to be educated. We were not welcome to be in churches and theaters, in restaurants. Like, nowhere were we allowed. And so now, when we feel like the system says, okay, now we will involve you in this system, we automatically we just run head first to these systems to say, oh, now you will accept me. Now I can be a part of it. And we think that it's a good thing. And so then we become a part of the very system that has been and continues to dehumanize and oppress and desecrate our bodies. And now we feel like we've come up because now they are allowing us to be a part of something, which in the end is for our demise. Like you just said, like, no matter what, they're going to pay us a little bit, they're going to treat us harshly, and then they're going to mistreat the people that we put into their care. But we say, oh, well, at least now I can do it. They allowing me to do it. Now they letting us do it. And we have to get to the point, we say the system never works for us. It never has our best interests at heart. And we've got to stop running to them just because they open the doors, because the open door is not genuine and it is not authentic.
Yeah, and another thing we have to look at is when we start to look at how we're going to care for the elderly people in our lives, how we're going to care about them. How we're going to look at that care. I think one thing that I was on a Zoom a couple of weeks ago when with an organization, and they were talking about how you start, to prepare, not for your mother, your father, your grandparents. How do you prepare in advance for them to have the care that they need? How do you start to formulate a plan? And it was basically for, it was for Black people and how they need to start, early on. I know some things happen where you just don't have no control over, but if you start planning and you start thinking long range, and I think sometimes as Black people, sometimes we don't look at the long range. We don't look at the long range goal. I think sometimes we are so focused on the here and now that we don't look beyond the here and now. And when you start looking at, okay, my parents, they're going to get older. They're going to get older. And they may have some funds in place. They may have a pension in place. They may have a retirement in place. But how do you get that to the point where if something, as they got older, are you going to put them in assisted living? Are you going to put them in a nursing home? Or are you going to create a space where, hey, they can stay here? And part of that is, and Denise, you talk about this a lot, is not being tied to a clock. You know, if you have your own business, if you have a work from home business, then you can say, as my parents and my grandparents grow older, then I'm in a place where I don't have to worry about not being able to take care of them because I can stay at home, or I can be in a situation where it's more conducive for me to take care of them than to trust somebody else, and to trust somebody else to take care of them, or to pay a just enormous amount of money. And one thing that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to these nursing homes, if you're not on Medicaid, or you don't have a certain amount of income, or you're not on certain parts of Medicaid, Medicare, then it's going to be some out-of-pocket expense, and that out-of-pocket expense may be more than you can handle, or more than your loved one can handle. So those are things we have to start thinking about in a long-range plan, and have to move from I'm just thinking about right now.
Yeah, and it also speaks to our the poor job that our pastors are doing as it relates to eschatology, like what happens after you die, like the end times. We don't, especially as Black people, we don't want to talk about death. We don't want to think about death. Somebody dies and we break down, we lose our minds, we can't function because mama gone. And so we have to have more healthy conversations about what it means to live a life, because death is part of the life cycle. And so we have to have more healthy conversations about that, so that we can, because a lot of people right now, you won't do a living will. You will not talk about it because you don't want to think about somebody dying, even though you know that that is a part of what it means to live, that you are going to die at some point. And so we have to talk about that. And for those of us who do have assets, whose parents have assets, as in my family, then we also have to realize that if you are going to care for your parents and you want to give them the very best care, and you're thinking that perhaps you might put them into some kind of facility, then you need to you need all of their assets out of their names, because in order for them to go into these facilities, in order for them to receive this care, they're going to spend all of their money. They're going to take all of their assets. So we have to now take control of that, so that we don't end up surrendering it to a system that says that you're concerned about them when really you just want their money. And so we have to have these conversations, but on so many levels that as Black people, we have not been taught to have these conversations. We will not allow ourselves to have the conversation. So we cannot position ourselves to do what's best because we ain't ready.
Yeah, and I think I think one of the factors is, not only are we not ready, but a lot of it's just not understanding. And what I mean by not understanding is that there's a natural progression. And if you don't understand that natural progression, and I do agree with you, and I think it's just not the pastors. I just think it's, the Black society as a whole will not sit down and talk about these long range terms, or, that death is a natural progression of life. And even when you have people come in, an insurance person come in and say, hey, we have some things that can help you, and plans that have helped you take care of your parents or your grandparents when they get older, that will help release some financial responsibilities, that you don't have to waste so much of money at the end trying to take care of them. And a lot of times we just dismiss it. A lot of times we say, I ain't gonna pay that. And then once that happens, then we have this idea, the next thing you know, we stressed out and we don't know what to do. And next thing you know, you end up putting your parents or your grandparents in this nursing home when there was an opportunity, to help resolve this problem before it became a problem.
I want to go back to what you said about the whoever it was that said that they want to now teach these classes. They want to teach these German classes. They want to teach these about the Jewish experience in America, or the Jewish lived experience. You said something about that because you brought up two issues, and we spent a lot of time talking about the first one. And you said that it was interesting to you that they want to talk about the Jewish lived experience and they want to talk about anti-Semitism, but they don't want to talk about Blackness. And I want to just say this, that I think that I know, that I feel, I believe in my soul, in my mind, in my spirit, in my body, that when white people think about what happened to, what happened with the Holocaust, what happened in Nazi Germany, when they think about that, they don't feel any connection to it in terms of responsibility or accountability. That was somebody else doing that at a different time, in a different space that has absolutely nothing to do with them. Whereas when you talk about Blackness, when you talk about people from the African diaspora, when you talk about enslavement, when you talk about continued enslavement, when you talk about just the different iterations of slavery that we continue to experience in this world, when we trace that back historically, it absolutely rests in the laps of white people. And they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to divulge that. They don't want to deal with that. It makes them uncomfortable. It makes them guilty. It makes them realize that everything that you have is because you stole it from particularly from Black folks. But everything that you have started with the way that you slaughtered and displaced the people who were First Nation people in this country. And then you enslaved the Black people to till that soil. So now you have to, if you're going to have a real conversation, you have to admit your complicity. You have to admit your privilege. And they don't want to do that. So it's easier for me to say, let's give space to Jewish folks, because, I don't feel responsible for that. But I cannot do that with Black folks, because now the blood is on my hands.
Yeah, and it goes back to something that I hear in a lot of conversations about. Let me get this call real quick. Calling you on there.
Yes, you do.
Hello?
This is a labor show. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Now, being a labor show too, were you aware during the COVID about the regulations that the government put on the staff at the nursing home? I remember we used to talk about during COVID time how our elders were dropping like flies, and at the same time, our government was putting regulations that all the staff at the different nursing homes had to have a shot unless it was for religious purposes. Now, I'm just a conspiracy theorist. These new regulations that the Biden administration is talking about, staffing levels and all that, that might tie into this next, I don't want to get too critical about it, but we got to look at what they do and how they do it. And I always say we are at war, but the staffing, and we didn't even cover the abuse that goes on at nursing homes too. Would you point that out, the abuse and about the staffing? Again, peace and love to all.
Yeah, and it goes back to what was saying earlier. Yeah, there is some abuse in these nursing facilities, and a lot of it is the fact that there are regulations and there are rules and standards, but a lot of times these standards and these rules are ignored based on who's in charge. Going back to what we were talking about, Beverly nursing homes, going back to the nursing homes that Michael Morton here in Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Missouri run, because when you can line the pockets of legislators who make the rules, then it becomes an uneven thing. It becomes where one can get away with something the other one can't. Also, I think because of what happened during COVID, because of the deaths in these nursing facilities, I think that was one of the reasons, I believe, that there had to be some type of federal oversight, because these states were pushing back. These nursing homes were pushing back on these the CDC recommendations. They were pushing back, and subsequently, so many people died needlessly. And so a lot of that was happening under the former president's administration. And so I think people looked at it and said, hey, we're going to have to put something in place. And as I said before, will it work? I don't know. I'm hoping it works. I think we all, when laws or regulations come out that we feel benefit us, we want them to work, and we hope they work, and they should work. But a lot of times they don't. But it becomes a starting point that something is being done. It may not be done in a way that should be or could be. It could be better, but it's a starting point. I think another thing, when we start to look at what's going on, in not only in the nursing home field but in the labor market, you're starting to see a lot of people starting to stand up and say we want to organize. You're starting to see a lot of people push back against certain things. You're starting to see a lot of people, like you said a second ago, Denise, that are letting people know that if you take your feelings out the way, I understand what has gone on in this country may make you feel a certain way, but let's look at the facts. Let's look at what needs to happen to go forward. I think if people can get out of their own way, I think that will help facilitate a better idea and a better way of trying to do things. And when you look at the system of rightness in this country, because there doesn't want to be an accountability, because it makes me, make them feel like, oh, don't blame me. Well, it's not so much that I'm blaming you for slavery. What I'm doing is blaming you for the continual systematic institutional slavery that you would not speak against or you were not doing anything to stop. And I think that's the conversation that has to be had. Colin, you on there?
One more thing after I click the next brother Toney and listen argument from well. When you speak of this problem that we folks have now with anyone who is pro-Palestinian as being anti-Semitic, that's kind of far-fetched, because when the Jewish folks, those Europeans who were in the Holocaust, they killed millions of Russians as well as millions of Jews. It was about the Aryans who were opposed to the Jewish population, the Jewish faith, or the Jewish experience. I mean, that was the Aryans who were against the Jewish folks. The United States would get Jews coming to this country that were trying to escape persecution. I know because I was in the hospital with a very good Jewish friend of mine. He was from Poland. Barack, which was his name. We talked day and night for weeks on end. And he was in the tunnels of Poland. He went back to fight after he came to America and joined the military. So it's an experience that they had with Europeans that made them in the Holocaust, if you will, and not the Palestinians or the Arabs or the Africans or whoever it is that with now, because they had to fight several countries over there at one time. But these were colonialist type people from Europe, and they were strengthened by America in 1948. They're the ones who put those folks over there. So that situation is not just a Jewish situation. Americans are as much involved in that than that on. We put our efforts over there, most of them, and continue to do it. So that's what I want to say. Holocaust is not Palestinians against Arabs against Jews, that anti-Semitic. To be a Semite, you have to be living in a certain area, which is around Africa, not in Europe. So that's what I'm saying. Everybody's supposed to be anti-Semitic now if they go along with, we don't need to be bombing babies in Palestine, etc. Starving Palestinians, etc. So that's what I want to add. I just want to comment on that.
No, I think that we could broaden the conversation and say the Holocaust isn't just about Jews, because there's a Black Holocaust. Holocaust means to burn. And we think about Black people who were lynched and burned and decapitated and body parts severed for souvenir purposes. Like, so yeah, it's a broader conversation for sure. So to say that just because you are against what's happening in Palestine, that makes you anti-Semitic, is the same to me as when you say because I'm pro-Black, that makes me anti-white. And that's just not true. We live in a world that continues to divide us with this duality. It's an either or situation that they offer to us, and they pit us against each other because they force us to choose sides, when we really need to be having more nuanced conversations about what's going on. So I agree with you. It's not because you're pro-Palestinian does not make you anti-Semitic. And we need to say that more and more and more. And we need to speak up for what's happening in Palestine, because it is evil and it is atrocious. I want to make sure we get this comment in from Phyllis Brown before we go. She's asking you, Toney, what does that mean when you say get out of their own way? You said it before Matt, Ezekiel called in. You said if white people would get out of their own way, then you kept talking about maybe we could get somewhere. So she says, what does that mean, get out of their own way?
Yeah, get out of their feelings. Get out of their, when they start to talk or when the conversation becomes, and just like Denise and Mac was just saying, when the conversation becomes about what the real issue is and what's really going on, the atrocities, the oppression, the systematic racism, the institutionalized racism, when it becomes that, you know, you have to get your feelings, you have to get all this other stuff out the way so you can have that genuine conversation, that genuine discussion to move forward, instead of saying, oh, that wasn't me, or you make me feel bad, or my parents, you know, my grandparents and all. It's not about that. It's about this issue that is constantly still going on, and you have to be able to sit down and push yourself out the way to have the conversation. And like you just said, Denise, when people start talking about whether it's Black, whether it's white, whether it's Israel, Hamas, the first thing they do is, like you said, choose sides, instead of start looking at 70% of the people who have died in this war have been women and children. 70%. Y'all, being a military person, you know, you never want your civilian casualties to be higher than your military casualties. So basically, you're just killing people and hope you hit a military, hit someone that's in the military. And then
I'm not even sure that they're just trying to find somebody that's in Hamas, because they're bombing refugee camps, they're bombing school. Like, these are places where you expect that, you know, children and women are. Like, so I'm not sure that they're trying to find the military targets.
I agree. Hey, we're almost out of time. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this morning. I want to thank everybody for calling in. Any last comments, Denise?
If we are going to live in a world that is more just, more equitable, more inclusive, and more peaceful, we are going to have to learn how to live and love differently. Okay, well, I hope everybody enjoy the rest of your day. Make sure you join us for Domino's in the Park tomorrow. And if we're not going to be in the park, if weather is bad, then we'll be at the Museum of Fine Arts at East 9th Street, 501 East 9th Street.
All right. See you later.
You're listening to the Voice of the People.